Welcome to the Dingir-Zone. Hi, I'm Victor, and today I want to talk about the Ten Commandments mainly, but also a bit about the Sumerian king lists, and they are a bit connected, but we'll come to that later. Recently I've come across this meme here that is posted on social media here and there, which says that the Egyptian Book of the Dead contained these instructions. Do not curse God, do not scorn God, do not abandon your parents, do not commit murder, do not defile the wife of a man, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not defraud the humble man of his property, which they argue here is very similar to the Ten Commandments. So they claim that the Ten Commandments were taken from this Egyptian Book of the Dead. And I found that interesting, so I looked into that. I was a bit skeptical because I thought, well, if there was such a strong connection between these two texts, I thought I should have heard about that. And so I looked into this question, where in the Book of the Dead is this even? And I'm not an expert on the Book of the Dead, so maybe I've found the wrong location. But this plate 32, in the literature you will also find it under the name 125a. This at least looks to me like the location they are talking about. And the first thing that you would notice when you look into that is this doesn't have this form, you should not do this, thou shalt not do that. It has the form of, I have never cursed the king, I have never fouled the water. So this is what is called a negative confession. So it says, I have not done this, I have not done that. And apparently that was just a list of things that you had to swear when you became a priest. And okay, why not? This could still be the source of the Ten Commandments. But when I've looked into this, what do we have here? I have not spoken scornfully, I have never cursed God. Okay, that's reminiscent of the second commandment, that you should not misuse the name of God. Okay, that would be the second commandment. I have not stolen would be the seventh. Then down here we have I have not robbed with violence. I might interpret that as I have not stolen, but robbery and theft are actually different things, so I wouldn't even say that. And we already had something against stealing. So down here I have done no murder. Okay, that's the fifth commandment. Depending on how you count it, there's actually more than 10 commandments in the Bible, and you have to lump them together to get it down to 10. And there are different ways you can lump them together. I'm using the Catholic counting because, when I looked into that, that counting made the most sense to me. So I have not done murder. I have told no lies. Thou shalt not lie is the eighth commandment. And down here, number 19, I have not committed adultery with the wife of any man. That's the sixth commandment. These are all the things that relate to the commandments as far as I can see. So we have the 2nd, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th commandment in there, and I don't find that very strong. I mean, not lying, stealing, murdering, adultery. Yeah, these are rules that any society would develop, I think. And yeah, not cursing God. Well, any society that has gods would have such a commandment. So yeah, I really don't see much of a connection there, right? These are just so general. I don't think that the authors of the Ten Commandments would need to to take them from the Book of the Dead, right? But the thing that I found most interesting in here is this passage, and I don't want to go too deep into that. I will just tell you what it's about. You can read it for yourself if you want to. And in this passage, it talks about what happens when you die. This is from the Book of the Dead, which was sometimes put into tombs with people who were buried, giving them apparently instructions how to go to heaven. Okay, so here it tells us that you will go to the door of the hall of Mati, and there you will be asked several questions like, what is the name of the door? What is the name of the floor? Strange questions. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? So some weird questions, and you need to know the answers to these questions. And if you can answer all these questions, then you will be led into heaven, and otherwise you will go down into the fire. And somewhere it talks about, I think, a lake of fire in there, very similar to what you find in the Bible. And actually this reminds me a lot of Zoroastrianism. You know, there the savior Saoshyant is described as the one who knows the words of life. Okay, and somewhere in some early Christian writing, I can't remember right now where, but they talk about Jesus ascending to heaven and having to say some passphrases at the different doors of heaven. So this sounds very, very similar. So apparently to go to heaven, you need to go to the doors of heaven. There you will be asked certain questions, and Jesus will tell you the answers to that, and then you will go to heaven. And otherwise you go to hell. Kind of funny how to get to heaven. But while we are at it, again, I don't think that the Book of the Dead is really the source of the Ten Commandments. I do think that the instructions of Shuruppak are connected to the Ten Commandments. If you remember in the video about Noah's Ark, I told you about Shuruppak, this city in Sumer, where the oldest copies of the Sumerian flood myth tablets were found, and that was mentioned in all the older flood myths, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, from which Noah's Ark is undoubtedly copied. We talked about that. And that was the city that was destroyed by a flood, actually. So that's a really important city. And it's also important because of some other things, not only the flood. If you remember, the Sumerian flood hero was named Ziusudra, right? And in the instructions of Shuruppak, it also speaks of Ziusudra, who receives a list of instructions from his father, Uburatutu. This is a pretty long list. I think 250, 280 different instructions. Some of them are not really that interesting. You should not buy a donkey with brace, it will split your midriff. I don't know. um, you should not locate a field on the road. You should not make a well in your field. People will cause damage on it for you. So that's more like good advice and not really commandments. But in here, we find a few interesting things like number 68, the warrior, talking about the sun god Utu, is unique. He alone is the equal of many. Utu is unique. He alone is the equal of many. With your life, you should always be on the side of the warrior. With your life, you should always be on the side of Utu. That's interesting. Calling a god unique, right? I mean, the first commandment says that there is only one God. So that God is also unique in a way. So this is actually a very interesting word to use here. And I find it very interesting that this text takes the sun god Utu out of all the other gods and puts him on a higher pedestal somehow, because the Codex Hammurabi, the law code of Babylon, there it also says that Shamash, the Babylonian sun god, gave the codex to Hammurabi. So that I think is an interesting connection. And so Utu is unique, and you should be on the side of the warrior. You should be on the side of Utu. I would say that this means you cannot use his name for something, so we might count this as the first and second commandment here. Number 255. You should not speak arrogantly to your mother. That causes hatred for you. You should not question the words of your mother and your personal god. The mother, like Utu, gives birth to the man. The father, like a god, makes him bright. The father is like a god. His words are reliable. The instructions of the father should be complied with. So that, I think, we can connect to the fourth commandment, to honor your parents. Then 252, pretty far back in this list, but okay, you should not kill. You should not kill something else. Okay, something is broken here. It might be talking about something else. He is a child born by, I don't know, you should not kill anybody, I guess, because everybody is a child of Utu, right? Like down here. I think that would make sense to put in here. And number 32. You should not play around with a married young woman. The slander could be serious. Again, more like advice and not a commandment, but interestingly, it talks about adultery being forbidden. So that's the sixth commandment we have here. Number 28, you should not steal anything. Yeah, that's the seventh commandment. Number 35, you should not something broken lies. I would say this just says you should not tell lies. Because otherwise your words will not be trusted anymore. Again, more advice than commandment, but lying. I think from the context we can conclude that this here is talking about telling lies. So that's the eighth commandment. Then 248. You should not abduct a wife. That's actually an interesting difference, or maybe not a difference, to the Ten Commandments, right? It's interesting that the Ten Commandments talk about adultery twice, right? But here the difference we have here actually, in my eyes, shine a bit more light on that, on these two commandments, because here we have a difference in the intent, right? First we had consensual adultery, right? The married woman was okay with the adultery, and here it's talking about abduction. It's not okay for the wife, but that fits more, I think, with the coveting your neighbor's wife and house. And speaking of the house, number 28. You should not break into a house. You should not wish for the money chest. Again, coveting someone else's property. And wives were basically considered someone's property. So that's that. But actually, I don't think that the 10 Commandments are directly taken from the instructions of Shuruppak. I think the book of Proverbs in the Bible maybe something like an in-between between the instructions of Shuruppak and the 10 Commandments. So if you look at Proverbs 1:8, for example, hear the instruction of thy father and forsake not the law of thy mother. So here we also have respecting your parents. 11 and 12. If they say, come with us, let us lay wait for blood, let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave and whole as those that go down into the pit. Yeah, that's murder. We shall find all precious substance. We shall fill our houses with spoil. That's theft. Then 2:16 to 19. To deliver thee from strange women, so wives of other men, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words. Then Proverbs 3:1. This is actually a very interesting point, in my opinion. My son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. Because this sounds a lot like the instructions of Shuruppak. Yeah, my son, let me give you instructions. You should pay attention. Let me speak a word to you. You should pay attention. Do not neglect my instructions. And similar sentences are throughout the document, indicating that they may have been extended multiple times. Down here, Shuruppak gave these instructions to his son, Shuruppak, the son of Ubaratutu. That's actually interesting, because normally Siusudra is the direct son of Ubaratutu, and here there seems to be a person named Shuruppak in between. So this Shuruppak seems to be the father of Siusudra and the son of Ubaratutu. Here verse 30, strive not with a man without cause, if he have done thee no harm. So you should not lie about him. Envy thou not the oppressor and choose none of his ways. So you shouldn't covet. 4:24. Put away from thee a froward mouth and perverse lips put far from thee. Again, no lying. 5:3. The lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil. I think talks about adultery. And when you go through the book of Proverbs and list all the things that are bad, I think you would pretty much come up with the 10 Commandments. And again, I think the Proverbs, just by the way they are written, the phrasing that they use is quite similar to the instructions of Shuruppak. So it's often this, if you do this, then that will happen, in a fatherly tone, teaching your son, hey, don't do these things, you will have bad outcome. Maybe again, not the Sabbath and not the idolatry. Maybe they were just not a thing at that time. And it's quite certain that idolatry is a later thing, because here in the 2 Kings 10:29, it talks about golden calves in Bethel and in Dan, right? And this is not something that would have happened if idolatry had already been forbidden at this time. I mean, 2 Kings would be somewhere around 1000 BCE. And yeah, the Ten Commandments would be at least 300 years earlier. So yeah, this whole thing with the golden calf and idolatry must be a later addition. So yeah, whatever. But we have now talked about Ziusudra and Uburatutu, right? And yeah, they were kings of Shuruppak. And in that context, I want to talk about the Sumerian king list. The Sumerian king list is, yeah, as the name says, a list of kings of Sumer, which has been found. And yeah, this is a really interesting list for many reasons. It talks here about the first king of Sumer, Alulim, who reigned for 28,000 years. This was before Enki and Enlil decided to make humans mortal, right? So living for 28,000 years was apparently possible. 36,000 years, 43,000 years, and that's not even the age they had. It's how long they reigned, right? But anyhow, this is a really interesting list, and we will find a really interesting connection between this list and Genesis 5, but we'll come to that later. So here we have Alulim, Alalmgar, Enmenluana, Enmengalana, Dumuzi. That's interesting, because that would be the husband of Inanna, one of the main gods of Sumer. Yeah, it's not certain that this is actually an actual king who may have been named after that husband of Inanna. Maybe the husband of Inanna is a deified version of this king. We just don't know. Then Ensipatiana and Mendurana. That's a really interesting one. That's the grandfather of Ziusudra, with Uburatutu being the father of Ziusudra, and then Ziusudra as the son of him. But okay, depending if this Shuruppak person exists, then Uburatutu would be the grandfather of Ziusudra. But that may be just an error in the interpretation, whatever. You can actually find the whole Sumerian king list on ETCSL. Translation 211. So here we have this whole list. But yeah, I'm really interested in this first part of the list before the flood. Okay, down here after Uburatutu, the flood swept over. And remember, Shuruppak was really strongly connected to this flood topic, right? We talked about this. And Uburatutu was king of Shuruppak. Here kingship was taken to Shuruppak in the Sumerian king list. This Enmendurana, the great-grandfather of Ziusudra, the Sumerian Noah, is very interesting because just like the great-grandfather of Noah, Enmendurana didn't die. He was taken to heaven. Okay, that's a really interesting here. He was taken to heaven, just like Enoch. Just like Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah. Right? So we have the same family relation between Ziusudra and Enmendurana that we have between Noah and Enoch. Okay, and the two on the one side have the same story as the two on the other side. Okay, that's really interesting in my opinion. It's even the case that here Enmendurana was taken to heaven by Shamash and Adad. Okay, Shamash is the sun god, right? And Enoch was also taken up by God. And this happened when he was 365 years old, right? So that's really interesting that the number of years that Enoch lived on earth is the same as the number of days in a solar year, right? I mean, back then the people hadn't figured out yet that basically the sun controls the year in a way. So by looking at the sun, you can predict when you will have summer, winter, spring, and fall. Back then, people mostly thought this was controlled by the moon, so you would have to look at the moon, and that caused all sorts of problems because a lunar year just always has this offset that messes up your counting, and I don't want to go into that right now. Point is, Enmendurana was taken by a sun god, and Enoch lived the length of a solar year, but as a number of years on Earth. So I find that a really strong connection between Shuruppak and the Bible again, right? So let's come to the comparison between Genesis 5 and the Sumerian king list. And this is a bit odd, okay? The first thing I will show you is actually pretty bad, okay? But bear with me, I will show you a much better connection. But first I want to talk about this. Genesis 5 has this list of people similar to the Sumerian king list, where it says that Adam lived for 800 years, his son Thes lived 807 years. Remember, this was also before God decided that the time span for humans should be limited to 120 years, just like with the Sumerian kings. Then Seth's son Enosh lived 815 years. And so on. And I've made this list here where I have listed, starting at year 0, the age at which everybody got their offspring, right? Adam had Seth when he was 130. So the year in which Seth was born was 130. And this is then taken down here with a formula. It's copied from here down here. And this is what's done always. That the year someone was born, then the age at which they got a son is added together to get the year in which they had a son. And then over here, I list the age at which someone has died. In some cases, it says how long somebody has lived after he has gotten children. Anyways, then here the age at which they have died is the age they were born plus the age when they had died. That's the year when they have died. Okay. And first thing I want to point out, we have Seth, Enos, Kenan, Mahael, Jared, Enoch, and Methuselah and Lamech. That's 8 entries between Adam and Noah. Okay, 8 entries. In the Sumerian king list, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 entries between the start and Ziusudra, if you don't count this man of Shuruppak that doesn't really seem to be there. But here this Enmendurana corresponds to Enoch, Ubaratutu to Methuselah, and Ziusudra to Noah, and then this man of Shuruppak would be Lamech. And here are the times, the years, how long they have reigned. Okay. Now, here this text here, the Antediluvian section of the Sumerian king list and Genesis 5 by John Walton. Here, this John Walton points out this connection between these two lists. When you take the age at which someone is died, but rounding it down to the last, to the tens, okay, like 912 becomes 910, 905 becomes 900, 895 becomes 890, right? If you do that, and that's not a good idea in my opinion, right? That's why I said this doesn't make that much sense to me. But if you do that, and then you make the sum over these results, right? Over these 8 entries, you get to 6,660. Okay, remember that. 6,660. Now the Sumerians had a different numerical system. They counted in multiples of 36,000, 3,600, 600, and tens. Okay. And if we take this numerical system and we plug in the number 6,660, we get 241,200, which I made a mistake. This here should be 18,600 years. Okay, now you see it. If we take 6,660, but in this different numeral system, we get 241,200, and that's the same number that we get by adding the reign of the Sumerian kings. And that, I think, is a really interesting connection, but I have 3 problems with that. First of all, why should you remove the last digit? That doesn't make sense to me, right? I mean, you get the same result like that, but why should you do that? There's no actual reason to do that. So, so this 6,660, in my opinion, doesn't say very much. And another problem that I see is that here, 6 times 600 would be another 3,600. So representing this number as 6,660 in this numeral system is just wrong. The more correct representation of this number would be 6,700. Okay. Right here, it's still the same result here. So let's just forget about this rounding numbers down, and let's just forget about it and look what we get when we sum the actual ages at which people died. Look, when you take a range of numbers, LibreOffice shows you the sum. Down here we have 6,695. Okay, that's not 6,700. There's 5 years missing, and we will talk about these 5 years. But first, I want to point out this actually makes no sense here, right? Why would you add the ages of people, right? I mean, in Sumer we were talking about the reign of people, right? Here it would make sense to take the sum of these numbers, because when this person stopped being king, this person started. Okay, so adding these numbers makes sense to get a time span from this person to this person, right? But that's not how ages work between parents and children, right? This the time span that Seth and Enos were on Earth is not the sum of the ages that they died, right? Because Enos was not born when Seth died. He was born when Seth was 105, right? So you have this time overlap between the ages, but not in the case of the reign of kings. I think at some point somebody just decided, hey, I want to have a bloodline instead of this royal succession, right? And they just replaced the bloodline with a royal succession, but kept some numbers. So yeah, then they got this 6,695. But what about these last 5 years, right? Remember, the Sumerian king list listed these years, right? And Ubaratutu stopped being king when the flood swept over, right? That was in the Sumerian king list. Then the flood swept over after when Ubaratutu stopped being king, right? Now check this. According to Genesis 5:30, Lamech lived 595 years after Noah was born. Okay, so Noah was 595 when Lamech died. Okay, and Noah was 600 years when the floodwaters came on the earth. So this is 5 years after Lamech died, right? He was 595 when Lamech died and 600 when the flood came. So this means that the flood came 5 years after Lamech's death. Okay. And yeah, this answers the question, right? If we take these ages, the death of Lamech at year 6,695 plus 5 years between Lamech's death and the flood puts the flood into the year 6,700. The exact same year that the Sumerian king list says the flood happened, just in a different numeral system. This is way past coincidence, right? This is so precise. Both say 6,700 is the year the flood swept, and yeah, with the only exception that we have to accept that at some point somebody replaced royal succession with a bloodline, and that messed up the logic here, right? But if we assume that this is what happened, yeah, then both these lists put the flood into the year 6700, which, if you remember, the video about Noah and Gilgamesh, there I said that the year in which Shuruppak was destroyed by a flood was dated to 2900 BCE. And if that is year 6700, it means that year 0 would be 6700 years earlier. So that would put year 0 to 9600 BCE. Although arguably, because the Sumerians celebrated New Year's twice a year, they had two different Akitu festivals. So it might be that this 6700 should be divided by 2. And yeah, if we add the 2900 to that now, this would put us to the year 6250 BCE as year 0. And I'm not exactly sure what to make of this. I mean, 9600 BCE would be around the time of Göbekli Tepe. Might have something to do with that. I also have an hypothesis about this 6250 BCE. But yeah, that's for another video. So yeah, for this video, that's, I think, enough. If you like this video, like it, share it, subscribe, and see you next time.